Hi, my name is Ye Yu. I'm currently a software engineer at Microsoft. I would like to introduce our work, Software-Defined Design Space Exploration for an Efficient DNN Accelerator Architecture, where I worked as a research intern at Alibaba when I was a PhD student at Princeton University. In this work, we developed an application-driven framework for architectural design space exploration of efficient DNN accelerators. This framework is based on a hardware analytical model for various DNN operations. The design space exploration task is modeled as a multidimensional optimization problem, which can be handled using a genetic algorithm. We use this framework in the early accelerator architecture design stage to achieve geometric mean performance improvements across 8 different DNNs. We use this framework to explore optimization opportunities for simultaneously address different diverse DNN applications. We perform a sensitivity study of the relationship between the DNN characteristics and the corresponding accelerator design configuration. First, let's look at a convolutional layer in the neural network. The convolutional layer is one of the DNN building blocks. In the forward pass, the convolutional layer involves a batch of 3D input feature maps with multiple learnable 3D kernel weights to generate a batch of 3D output feature maps. As shown in the figure, the convolutional layer operations can be represented by 5 sets of convolution loops, looping through different kernels, looping within one input feature map channel, looping through multiple feature map channels, looping within one kernel channel, and looping through different inputs in the batch. The execution order of these loops can be interchanged to optimize the data flow. The loop dimension parameters are determined by the architecture of the DNNs. The on-chip memory of the accelerator may not be large enough to hold the entire dataset for input feature maps, kernel weights, and output feature maps. Therefore, they need to be partitioned into smaller data chunks in order to fit in the on-chip memory. This is called loop tiling. The T parameters denote the corresponding design variables for the loop tiling, and they represent the size of the data chunks stored in the on-chip memory. Computational parallelism in the convolutional layer comes from the loop unrolling, which increases the acceleration through throughput and resource utilization ratio. The P parameters denote the number of parallel computations in each dimension. As the computing resource can only process the data stored in an on-chip memory, and the tiled data set is a subset of the total data set, the design constraints are set as P parameters are smaller or equal to the T parameters, and T parameters are smaller or equal to the N parameters. In this work, we provide an analysis of hardware accelerator processing of DNN operations. Based on this approach, we build analytical models for various compute-intensive DNN operations for latency estimation. Please refer to the paper for the detailed analysis for the convolutional layer. And we map the fully connected layer matrix multiplication and depth-wise convolutional layers to the convolutional model, the analytical model I mentioned before, so that we can estimate a broad range of operations in DNNs. Again, please refer to the paper for the detailed analysis. Next, I will discuss the proposed application-driven architectural optimization framework that is based on the analytical operation models. As the figure shows, here is the accelerator architectural optimization flow. An architecture description file is used to define the design variables of hardware accelerator. For example, it defines variables for the compute resource organization and allocation of on-chip memory for activations and weights. Another input is the DNN computation graph of the target application that the accelerator is optimized for. We obtain this DNN computation graph by passing the model file frozen from TensorFlow. It is a directed acyclic graph, DAG, in which a vertex represents a DNN operation and an edge defines data dependency. The computation graph is first analyzed by a graph analyzer to generate a DNN operation string. Then the latency of each operation in the string is estimated using the cost model discussed before. The total latency of the DNN model is estimated as the sum of these latencies. We only focus on the time-consuming operations. Accelerator performance on the target application is then optimized using a multidimensional optimizer to obtain an optimized architectural configuration. The graph analyzer and the multidimensional optimizer are discussed next. The graph analyzer is used to transfer the model graph into a string of operations, where the model execution is assumed to follow the order of the string, and the latency of the operations can be estimated using the cost models discussed below. The DNN DAG is analyzed by performing depth-first search backward from n node. The operation string is obtained such that an operation can only be appended to the string if it has no parent node or all of its parent nodes are already processed and are in the string. The dynamic memory demand of the model is monitored during the DAG traversal. This figure shows an example of the DAG and dynamic memory allocation analysis of the intermediate results. White nodes represent the unprocessed operations that can only be processed if they have no parent nodes or all of their parent nodes have been processed. Then they become blue nodes whose outputs are stored in the on-chip memory. Their income edges are then removed since the data dependency no longer exists after they are processed. A blue node turns to gray if it has no more outgoing edges, which means no more nodes depend on it. Hence, memory space for its output can be deallocated. The dynamic memory allocation is monitored throughout the DAG traversal, and the maximum dynamic memory demand sets the lower bound for the on-chip buffer size of the accelerator if all the intermediate outputs or the activations need to be stored in the on-chip buffer. Here we use we model the architectural optimization task as a multidimensional optimization problem. We choose performance under an error constraint as our optimization metric, where the DNN processing latency is estimated from the analytical model. The design variables defined in the architecture description file are the independent variables for multidimensional optimization. We use a genetic algorithm to solve the multidimensional optimization problem. Other optimization methods, such as integer linear programming, may also be used. Please refer to the paper for the detail of this optimization. We use this optimization framework to study the relationship between the accelerator architecture and the characteristics of its target DNN applications. We first optimize the accelerator performance under an error constraint on the target applications through accelerator design space exploration. We provide an analysis of the characteristics of the different optimized architectures. This figure shows a template of the accelerator architecture. Two on-chip buffers are used to store weights and activations respectively, and max are distributed in multiple PE groups. We assume that accelerator bit width is 8 and it uses a batch size of 4. We select the obtained architectural configurations with top 10% performance in terms of giga operations per second, or GOPS, for each DNN application as candidates for optimized configuration selection. The radar charts plot the normalized design configurations for the optimized accelerator architectures. We can see that figure A and C have similar shapes. This means that the optimized architectures for Inception v3 resemble those for ResNet v150. This is consistent with the performance plots in the next slide, where they both achieve the highest performance on the two networks. The reason for this architecture and resulting performance similarity is that the two networks share similar characteristics. Inception and ResNet have similar peak input weight memory demands, which means that the two networks require similar on-chip buffer size for the same data processing batch. This is why the figure A and C have the same values for bank height, bank width, and weight banks, and number of weight banks and number of activation banks. Besides, both networks mainly comprise of 2D convolutional layers. Although the depths of the two networks are different, the distributions of the feature map size and the number of feature map channels are similar. Architectures optimized for Deep Lab v3 and faster RCN also show similarity in terms of their architectural configurations and performance on the two networks. They both require relatively large on-chip memory for inputs. And the performance of the optimized architectures on the 8 DNNs are plotted here. And among all the candidate configurations, we select the one with the highest geometric mean of performance on the 8 DNNs. It is compared to the architectural configurations with the best performance on each individual DNN, as shown in this table. The selected configuration outperforms the best configuration for each DNN by 12% to 118% in terms of geometric mean performance. The different characteristics of various DNNs may lead to significant different configurations in the design space. Thus, the target applications should be considered in the early design stage to design efficient accelerators for a broad range of DNN applications. We observed from the previous experiment that the optimized accelerator architectures diverge for different DNN applications. Hence, we then explore if there exist new optimization opportunities when very different DNN applications run simultaneously on the same hardware accelerator. First, we mix the inception v3 and PTB by interleaving layers from both DNNs. Then we use the framework to optimize the accelerator architecture on this mixed DNN in a multi-thread manner. The operations from inception and PTB run on the accelerator alternately. The multi-threading scenario is simplified using this mixed layer string. In real scenario, a more sophisticated scheduler would be needed to decide the layer execution order for the two models. The inference result obtained using the multi-threading mixed layer back as layers from different models are tagged and data are not shared across the models. This figure shows the resulting architectural configurations with top 10% performance on this multi-context application. This radar chart is quite different from the ones I showed in the previous slides. It is not a simple combination of the two charts of the inception and PTB. It has smaller number of maps compared to inception and smaller loop tiling size compared to PTB. Inception v3 is computational intensive. It is dominated by 2D convolutional layers and thus requires relatively larger number of maps for efficient processing. On the other hand, PTB is memory intensive. It consists of a large number of matrix-matrix multiplication layers with relatively high peak input weight demand. Hence, large tiling size appear in its optimized architectural configurations. However, when these two DNN applications run simultaneously on the same accelerator, the required amount of compute and memory resource is lowered in the optimized configuration. The reasons for this are twofold. First, under an error constraint, the optimized architectural configurations for the multi-context application need to maintain a balance between compute and memory resource. Second, the complementary characteristics of inception and PTB help relax both compute and memory design constraints on the accelerator architecture. While maps are mainly devoted to convolutional layers of inception v3, filtered weights can be transferred between the weight buffer and external memory for matrix-matrix multiplication layers for PTB at the same time, with no or very little performance loss, since the layers of both DNNs are interleaved. This shows that optimal design for multi-context applications may not be a simple combination of designs optimized for the individual applications, and new optimization opportunity can be explored using our application-driven architectural design space exploration framework. It is evident that application-driven architecture optimization framework will generate similar architectural configurations for DNNs with common characteristics. However, to better understand the reasons for the different accelerator configuration results, we perform an application sensitivity analysis to discover the hardware-software relationship in DNN applications. We build a faster RCN network in 4 steps. In the first step, we build a DNN with the same number of 2D convolutional layers as that in the fast RCN, but with relatively larger feature map size. The next step is to make the convolutional dimensions the same as those in the fast RCN. Depth-wise separable convolutional layers and matrix multiplication layers are then added in the following 2 steps. In each step, we use the architectural optimization framework to generate the architectural configurations and select those with top 10% performance. The figure ABCD show the optimized architectural configurations obtained at each step. We can see that reducing the feature map size of the convolutional layers impact the loop tiling design variables. Smaller tiling size are preferred for better performance, reducing the feature map size while keeping the loop tiling variables unchanged. Reducing the feature map size while keeping loop tiling variables unchanged will lower the efficiency of memory transactions. Thus, the value of loop tiling variables is also reduced. In the third step, 13 depth-wise separable convolutional layers are inserted at every 2 conv layers with the same convolutional dimensions as their following 2D convolutional layers. Comparing to the fast RCN radar chart, we can see that comparing the figure B and C, we can see that just adding depth-wise separable convolutional operations without changing the feature map size does not affect the optimized architectural configurations. In the fourth step, large matrix multiplication layers are added. The number of PE groups is increased to generate more parallel max for matrix multiplication processing. Besides, this also increases the value of loop tiling variable again, since more computational parallelism can be exploited when processing large data trunks. This is consistent with the architectural configurations optimized for PTB, where the network only consists of large matrix multiplication layers. If the underlying hardware compute resource is fixed, you can perform a similar sensitivity analysis on the target network using this application-driven architectural optimization framework. The analysis results can be used to guide the DNN model development to fit the underlying compute resource. In conclusion, we develop an application-driven accelerator architectural optimization framework. We use this framework to optimize accelerator architecture configuration for 8 different DNNs using this framework. We conduct a multi-context optimization experiment. We also perform the application sensitivity analysis using this framework. And that's it. Thank you.